On this edition of the Watchmen Brief, what happens when responsibility comes back to the state and local level? We'll talk with activist and entrepreneur Mason Weaver about that exact thing, the launch of the American States' Rights Forum, and what responsibility actually is. All of that and more straight ahead on the Watchmen Brief. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another edition of the Watchmen Brief. My name is R.C. Williams, co-founder of Sherlock Market Research and Watchmen Action, a 501c3 nonprofit with Juliana Ormond. Today's show is brought to you by Florida Goldbacks. The Goldback revolution is coming, and you're going to have an opportunity to get some Goldbacks absolutely free. You can visit goldback.com for more information and watch this space for your opportunity to get free Florida Goldbacks. The parallel economy is finally here, and it's waiting for you. The show is also brought to you by Good Cheap Travel, the three things you need when you want to go on a trip that makes sense at a cost that doesn't break the bank. You can visit goodcheaptravel.com for more information. If you are like me and you have some semblance of facial hair or a beard, you are a discerning beardsman. Place you need to go, bearddapper.com. All the products you need to keep the scruff on your face nice and clean. And Watchmen Action, equipping the church to engage the culture and providing an extensive training curriculum for conservative Christian activists to get the job done within their 10-block radius, their town, city, their state, and their country. For more information on that, you can visit watchmenaction.org. Also, don't miss our two news publications. Ripped from the Headlines breaks down the news in a way that you can use. Just go to sherlockexposes.com. And We Are the Watchmen Weekly is the newsletter that equips the church to engage the culture. For more information, go to wearethewatchmen.org. All right, let's bring our guest in, Mason Weaver. Welcome to the Watchmen Brief, my friend. It's a blessing to have you on. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so wow. Where do you even start in a world with so much going on? As we're doing the show today, things are crazy. We're 12 days or so away from Donald Trump being inaugurated and everything like that. So we have a lot of ground to cover on some things that he said. But Mason, we'd love for you to introduce yourself to the Watchmen Brief audience, because you've done a whole lot, including stirring up a whole lot of trouble in the best way possible. But if you could please, give the audience just a background on Mason Weaver and what you've been up to.
You have to be patient. In a few weeks, I'll be 75 years old. So there's a whole lot of things I've done. And I've caused trouble all of my life, every bit of it, from 1 year old on top. Basically, I'm a citizen. I'm a citizen of America. That means I influence and run things. This is my nation. I know I'm black. Many of you aren't to notice that I'm black. I've been black all my life. Except for Berkeley, I was a African-American, but I got over that. When I finally realized that if I go to Africa, would they call me an African-American African? I don't know. So I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in the hood, and I noticed all my life I've been noticing things, paying attention, because nothing's hidden, folks. I'm a kid in the hood, and I'm in a slow learning class. The whole building was slow learners. And the school got more money, teachers got more money. The slower I was, the dumber I was, the more they got paid. So guess what? I was labeled as a slow learner until my mother decided, it's really funny. I was a slow learner at school, but a fast learner at home. So she moved my behind out of St. Louis into the deep, deep Ozark country, hillbilly country, where I thrived and I was eligible to graduate a year early by the time I got to the junior high school. They didn't want me to graduate because, as I mentioned, it was an all-white school district. So I was the only basketball player they had. So they wanted me to stay one more year to play basketball. I decided it wasn't my best interest, so I wanted to go to college. And my coach and my counselor told me that it was a stupid idea for a black man to strive to go to college because it was wasting my time and money, that if I was nice, they'd try to give me a job with the other colored boys. I didn't want a job with the other colored boys. I wanted a career. So I joined the Navy the same day that the king was murdered. Went to Vietnam. Did not get a scratch on me in Vietnam. Gave some scratches, but did not get any on me. And went to San Diego, where I'm on a ship, working hard. And there was a known racist. As I mentioned, I grew up in the Ozark Mountains. I played with Klansmen and their kids. They got their. I figured that if I cut them, they'll bleed. They cut me, I bleed. I didn't care about their belief on who I was. So I'm with this guy on my ship. There was an open Klansman and a racist, and I was a black power, black militant. I was doing my thing, and he was. And we had debates every day. I thought it was a friendly discussion. I thought it was just two old guys, two Vietnam veterans haggling together, until one day I ordered this Klansman. I thought we were shipmates. I ordered him to take control of 2,800 pounds of steel. And I stood between him and a steel wall behind me. And I looked him in the eye and I saw the look on his face. I knew he was going to try to kill me. He dropped 2,800 pounds of steel on me. My entire life passed before me. I now hated all white people. I went to Berkeley and became a black Muslim, a black Panther. And I graduated with degrees in political science. And I went to work for the Department of Energy, and I started my political career right after that, seeing things wrong with America. What I saw wrong with America was Americans. I don't have to go to you to beg you for benefits. I'm a grown man. I began to look at myself as being responsible for who I was and where I was. And that outlook on life drove me to do things for myself. And I started a business, became a businessman. I've written 16 books on 4 different topics. Politically, I've been involved in the Republican Party for a long time. I ran for Congress, ran for state rep. I worked for Donald Trump in his campaign in 2016. I am a black man with an attitude. I've upset a whole lot of people. I've interviewed the Grand Dragon of the KKK, and he threatened to kill me. I gave my address and never showed up. I don't understand. I've been so attacked that I had to change my name back in the 1980s, 1990s. My name was really Clarence Mason. I had to change it to Mason Weaver because people will make me hurt them. They will knock on my door in the middle of the night and make me hurt them. So I decided I didn't want to go to jail. I love my wife and kids, so I decided to stand up for America. This election, folks, we have seen a combination of all the problems we've seen in the last 50 years. We sat quietly and watched it. And we prayed to God Almighty to give us one more chance. We allowed the ungodly to rule. He gave us back our country. He gave us Trump, who's the next David. And now we have to stand up for what we believe if we want to keep it. It's ours, but it's the individual rights based on the county rights, based on the state rights, and the federal government is supposed to follow us, not lead us.
So Mason, it's interesting. You mentioned a minute ago in your history about being a Republican. Now, both of us are black, right? And that has been unusual throughout history, although things changed relatively quickly. There was a giant switch because for the most part throughout history, black people were Republicans and they were conservative, right? And the neighborhoods. It is strange. Right? It is strange how that happens. So your book, It's Okay to Leave the Plantation. Can you talk a little bit about that, how it ties into that mentality, right? Because I made the statement that it changed, but you said, no, it never switched. That was a big lie. Yeah. So just take a minute then, because this ties into states' rights and responsibility. Talk to us a little bit about the book, because I think the title says a lot about the conversation we're having.
Normally I have a book up here. I'm not a good businessman. Normally I have it up here, but I don't have it. Folks, I took political science at Berkeley for one reason. I was curious. What kind of psychological magic would it take to get a black person to vote against their own interests? To get a citizen to vote against the slave master, to vote for slavery, better treatment of plantation. I began to look at this, and all these polls you hear about 95% of black folks vote Republicans, Democrat rather. Those polls were taken exit polls in the ghetto. You're standing in Compton taking a poll. You're standing in Watts taking a poll. You're gonna get the poll you want. But 75% of black people are middle class. You don't poll me. I don't get polled. I vote for my family and my income and my opportunities. So black people, you're right. On the plantation, they're run by Democrats. The South was run by Democrats. The future slave act happened. Now, Democrats, since slave days, have been asking about compromise. Let's find compromise. Let's find common ground until they gain power. 1851, Democrats gained power. They won the presidency and both houses of Congress, and they immediately stopped compromising. They passed the Fugitive Slave Act. making it a felony for you to know there's a slave living next door escaping. He escaped from the South, went to your house, next to your neighbor. It was a felony for you not to report him. And in Wisconsin, it was a strongly anti-slavery state. And this slave owner, the slave in St. Louis, escaped and went to Wisconsin trying to get to Canada. His master in St. Louis located him in Wisconsin, took 2 St. Louis police officers across state lines into Wisconsin and kicked the door in, took the slave out, beat him, took him to a local jail to keep him overnight so they could prepare to take him back to slavery the next day. But hundreds of white men marched to that jail. It was a construction site next door. They took the equipment away from the construction site and literally, figuratively, tore the walls down of the jail and took this man out. And I went back, because I'm a researcher, I went back and looked at a local paper on that date. 4,000 to 6,000 citizens lined the streets as this guy was paraded down the street going to Canada freedom. They were anti-slavery. Now, what happened 2 days later, this anti-slavery citizenship went to a little local schoolhouse and formed the official anti-slavery party. The reason for the party being founded was to end slavery. That was the Republican Party. And in 1861, their first candidate, Abraham Lincoln, said one simple thing, 9 platforms. He's just like Trump. This is what I'm going to do. If you elect us, we're going to end this. We're going to end this. 6 of the 9 planks said, we're going to stop this mess. No more compromise with Democrats. And guess what happened? He stood like Trump. We won the majority. We won the presidency. We won the Senate. We won the House, the majority of state governorships, the majority of state houses, the majority of state legislatives. We won total 100% of the country. And the Democrats had no choice but to leave. That's who we are. Republican Party and Fight for Freedom never get defeated when we stand up. So today, we're back compromising with Democrats, trying to find common ground with Democrats, trying to make sure that we're going to be portrayed as being equal. Folks, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I was not fair to the Viet Cong. I guarantee you. I'm in warfare. So we're fighting for our children now. We're fighting they're teaching your children to be confused of what gender they are in your face. They're calling you a terrorist because you protested in our face. We are Americans. Are you kidding me? We're Americans. Today, I saw Europe complain about the sovereignty of America threatening Denmark. I mean, threatening the Greenland, Graceland, and also the Panama Canal. And I'm saying, oh, you don't want us to play in that field? Then we keep our NATO money and defend your own doggone self. Defend your own self. So we have to understand, folks, who we are now. We are the strongest nation on this planet for one reason, in my opinion. We praise God all the way to victory. We did it then, we did today. Every time we do that, every nation, you will never see a nation go into captivity while they're worshiping God. Never see it. And you never see them come out in the Bible or in history. You never see a nation come out of slavery until they stop worshiping God. Black folks came here worshiping all kinds of false gods. Hoodoo, voodoo, you do, me too. Everybody we can think of, we were worshiping. Tapped the slave ships, trying to figure out why didn't the rock I worship save me? Why didn't that goat I worship save me? We stayed in slavery until we start singing those Negro spirituals in the South, in those fields. And a Christian movement began with Reverend John Brown and Minister Harry Bridger Stoll. And God's people came out of slavery praising him. You have never seen a civil war like this. This civil war wasn't for money, wasn't for land, wasn't for control. It was white men going south to fight their brothers to free strangers. 360,000 white men gave their lives, not for money, not for power, not for prestige, but to correct an immorality in their brother's home. And folks, when we did that, God said, okay, I believe you. Here's your freedom. What you going to do with it? And we're now at the same place. With the same place. God has said to us, okay, you got enough? Lot? You got any righteous men here? Lot? And so we have been giving our nation back. This is why I'm so tired. I'm tired right now because I've been preparing to get back into the war again. I've been prepared. Your show is getting people ready for the war again. But all we got to do, folks, Remember one thing. All we got to do, don't matter how big Goliath is. Doesn't matter how big they are, folks. David was not sent to kill Goliath. David was sent to go feed his brothers. And Goliath happened to be there. And David said, I got any rocks? Take this for a minute. I got something to do. I'm busy. Because God, when he calls busy people, David fell to his feet because he was already a dead man, cursing God, going against God. He was already dead. Folks, America has turned their back on God completely. 34 times we voted for same-sex marriage and we won every election. How the heck we get it?
Yep.
We let our leaders give it to us. So now God has given you, America, one more chance. If you act like you believe in him, he will act like he believes in you. Let's go get our nation back. Stop the foolishness.
Mason, it's so important what you share about biblical principles and how we're structured. I mean, that even happened with the Black family and the Black community,
Yes.
right? When the Father was being praised, stability, growth, people emulated those families.
Yep.
Uncle Tom, too, did a really good job of showing us what the world was actually like. And when those things changed, what changed? Much like our nation now. So it's interesting because as we do this, Donald Trump is maybe just under 2 weeks away from being inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. And the way that we met, we spoke at an event together at the end of October of 2024. And we were having the discussion about what happens when Trump makes statements like, hey, we're going to cut and slash this bloated federal government, and we're going to return those responsibilities and those dollars to the states and also the local levels. And from that, we're now part of the American States Rights Forum. That's an association of all of us who agree and believe that are trying to prepare people for that responsibility. So Mason, through that lens and understanding that we've turned our backs on God, what do we need to do to be prepared? Because I'm of the belief that Trump is going to make good on this promise, and we're going to start to see a lot of responsibility, including education, really come back to the states. What can we do to get prepared, and what action steps can we take to make sure that, in our case, we're in Florida, that Tallahassee does not become a miniature version of DC in its own swamp?
If we looked at Trump and determined he was our leader, white folks, Black folks, male, females, young, rich, and old, then we have to listen only to Trump. Not the noise, not the complaints, not the word. We know what Trump said he's going to do. We voted for him because we know it. And we're going to have to follow him, because that means we have a general in charge of the army now. But overall, in a broad picture, folks, we are the rulers of this nation. We are in control of this nation. I had a cop stop me, and I had to educate the cop. I had to educate him. You don't stop me because you're curious about something. You don't stop me and ask me to identify myself to you. You have no jurisdiction here. You're dismissed. Go to work. You work for me. He said, I don't work for you. Yes, sir. You work for me. And you will do your job respectfully. You're going to do your job. Folks, we have to understand who we are. If we don't do that, we're going to lose this. The government does not rule us. So the state, this nation is made up of 51 private countries. 51. Some are foreign countries, some are beach countries, some are rural, some different beliefs, different ideas, different hopes and prayers. And we come together at election time, but each state rep represents that state. And we have to get back to that. Right now, Democrats are conspiring by state how to fault Trump, how to this illegal alien deportation. They're already organized. We're sitting back talking about it. They are organized down to the county level. How they're going to interfere with Trump. We're sitting back, folks. We should be having rallies. We should have people come together right now, taking membership, because when they show up at rallies, we got to show up with them. I don't mean everybody. I don't mean your beautiful wife. I mean you and me. The dudes with the heavy shadow. We have to show up, and be prepared. This is our nation. You got any children? Look at your kids. We're too passive. We're the nation that saved the world war twice. We're the only nation that go to the moon. Come on, folks. We can do this. We have
Mason.
schools not even teaching us, not even teaching the Constitution. The reason they don't teach cursive is because the Constitution is written in cursive.
Right.
They don't want you to read it.
Absolutely right. Mason, so you brought up something interesting about states reps, and how that works. So most people understand that their rep in Congress in DC represents a district, right? An area in which they live. Many people have no idea that at the state level, they have something very similar. What's an interesting trend, and NTD News caught this last year, and we actually ran a story on it in Rip from the Headlines, is that the enemy understands that there is a state apparatus that really has significantly more impact on you and your family than anything at the national level. What they discovered is that progressives who want to end the Electoral College are doing a very sneaky end run on that by getting state legislatures to pass laws that say that regardless of how their electors voted for president and vice president, which powers the Electoral College, because the state legislators have final say over that, is that they can give those electoral votes to whoever they want, regardless of what the will of the people was. Because the way it's designed, people vote, electors say, okay, based on our rules, here is who we are going to commit our electoral votes to based on this result, and then those are counted. But what this says is that state legislatures actually have the ability to do whatever they want with those electors' votes and choose whoever they want. So in essence, what would happen is they would nullify the Electoral College. Mason, the fact that something like this now, I think, is in 18 states, it just passed in Maine, if I'm not mistaken. They're using it as a Trojan horse. So they're not making a big deal out of it, but it's just sitting there waiting to be triggered. Through that lens, in your opinion, based on what we're doing with states' rights, how important is it that people are right on top of their state legislators, and even at the county and local level? How important is it that they're paying attention?
You have to act locally. You cannot act regionally. You cannot act statewide. You have to act locally. The elected officials must have fear of the electorate. They must have fear. Right now, they have no fear because we believe everything they say. They're the leaders. They're not the leaders. You're the leader. And they pass these ordinances hoping that we never find out. Once they get control of the U.S. Supreme Court, they're going to do this stuff. They can't do it now. Clarence Thomas is going to be retiring pretty soon. He's going to be out. They was hoping that he would get out during Biden. Once they get control of the U.S. Supreme Court, all this nonsense they're doing is going to come into play unless we organize ourselves into a place of leadership that can disseminate information down to us to an active local county level so that we can take over the county Republican Party, for instance, and have a contest about who we're going to represent. Have leaders that are proven to be patriots, not just good politicians, but proven to be patriots. Do you love this country? Show it. How have you shown you love this country? You should not elect somebody to public office that has not demonstrated in their past their love for this country. And then, folks, then we get the schools to teach our children something other than how to be a good slave.
Right.
How to work for their kids. Teach them who you are as a nation, This is an experiment, a great experiment of self-governing, never happened before in the history of mankind, where the citizens decided to form a government. That has never happened. It was a testimony to what God was doing for us, but we're giving up that because we are not acting like we're rulers. We're acting like we're slaves. We take advice. I mean, look at folks during COVID. I was just moved to a small town in Missouri, back to where I grew up, as a matter of fact. And I was looking for a good church. Thought I found one. COVID hit, and the government said to the church, "You're not essential, but the whole house is." I said, "Great, we're gonna go to jail, right? We're gonna go to jail, right? I'm looking for a church that's gonna be going to jail. I know you're gonna protest this." Then they said to the church, "You can't have service because you're spreading the COVID by singing and dancing and hugging each other." Church said, okay, what are we gonna do this? Who's leading this pack? Where are we gonna march? We're gonna demonstrate. What is my Matt? I couldn't find one church, one pastor. Well, you know, you got to be out of your mind. You got to be joking. They're going to tell you they're going to tell you how to praise your God. Are you kidding me?
Mm.
So God sat back and waited for us. I moved here to Florida. Found one church too far away in Tampa. But folks, every action of our country's history was a Christian activity. The Civil War, Revolutionary War, everyone. And we better understand God rewarded us for that. They were scheming against us because we are not scheming. They're organizing against us because we are not organized. They're planning and plotting because we think they're the leaders. And it's going to take an organization like we're trying to start right now. An organization we bring folks in, not just put pressure on states, because they don't care about the pressure. Do you have votes behind you? They care about that. Do you have donors behind you? They care about that. So if you walk in, if you want every politician to sit in their little smoke-filled rooms and worry what you're going to do, but what they're going to say. What's he going to say about this? Well, we got to find out first. They have no fear of us. Let's put some fear in our state governments.
Mason, that point at the end, that you actually dovetailed into my next statement here, and it's going to be another question for you that comes out of it. So Juliana and I were on a call last night. We're helping to fight the battle against demonic forces in the state of New York, and we'll be speaking at a conference or two conferences in the state this summer, particularly in Queens. And one of the things that was said, because there were some people who want to run for office on the call or who had served in office, one of the things we shared is that you need to make it very clear to the public servant, because I'm not going to call him a politician, because your job, as you mentioned a moment ago, you work for me, right? So you are a public servant. And having just finished up 2 terms myself as a vice president of the Republican Assembly in this county, we helped to stand that chapter up, and now it's exploded throughout the state. I've always said to people that I serve at the pleasure of the membership. And people say, well, where does that come from? What do you mean? I said, look, George Washington historically had an opportunity to be a king. And everybody's like, okay, well, he's king, and we're good with that. He did something so out of line with traditional thinking of the day with monarchies, where he said, no, I'm going to lay down this power and let a self-governing society be self-governing. Mason, I often wonder how we went from a situation where the founders and framers and the generations that came after them went begrudgingly to public service, tried to get it done and get back to their families and their businesses and their property and their community, because they knew that they needed to do those things. How did we go from that to a place where people run to these things and turn it into a gravy train? Where in life can you go and be a public servant and come out richer than when you went in? Interestingly enough, Donald Trump, one of the rare people who was rich going in and actually lost money in public service, right? So interesting dynamic. So Mason, that spurs the question: is it because you do this routinely, but for people who are watching who don't know how but want to, how do you deal with your public servants at any level? You mentioned the peace officer, right? But their mayor or their city council or their county commission, how do they approach them and talk to them in such a way so that they clearly understand the rules and they understand that they work for the people?
Yeah, you got to make them understand that you know the rules.
Mm.
That's the first thing you do. You show up at city council, folks. 4 or 5 of us changed school board in Lee County. The education board in Lee County. They're not afraid of you because you're not active. They're not afraid of you because you worship them. You look up to them. A civil servant should be terrified of every civilian because we run them. So what has to happen? We all can't go to the school board meeting. We can't go to the city council meeting. We can't go down there to that meeting. But you got to be able to pay attention. You got to have folks you believe in, your pastor, somebody that's feeding you what's going on there, because they will not announce what they're passing, what they've been doing. So if we don't stop them at the local level, they're going to end up being raised up and raised up. I worked for 5 United States congressmen in California. 5. Nothing changed. It was a game. They didn't care about the phones ringing. They didn't care about upsetting the population because they were set up as rulers. The Honorable Congressman so-and-so. I had a debate with a judge because I refused to call the judge honorable. You didn't run as honorable. You ran as judge. Why I got to call you honorable? You know, he said, well, have you heard of contempt of court? I said, I don't see it in the law anywhere. Where's the law of contempt? Why is it that I could have freedom of speech to my government? That's what it means, to my government, to address my concerns of my government. So how can I sit here in this courtroom and say something you don't like? And you can find me contempt, sentencing me to jail without a trial, without a jury, without my lawyer, and keep me as long as you want to. How can you do that? Explain to me the law, Your Honor. If I can do that, why do I gotta sit here and look 10 feet up to you like you God? Why am I? What is this mess? He didn't know who I was. All of a sudden, he didn't want to find out. He didn't want to find out because I knew who I was. I was standing in this courtroom, and you're not going to intimidate me. You're not going to put me in jail. You're not going to do nothing. I'm going to raise more hell on you. You can count on, folks. We have to. We all believe in heaven and hell. We got to bring hell sometimes. Just put a little fear in them because they're really most folks run for office because they're cowards. They're bullies. They're bullies. And right now, we have to control public education. We have to control what they're being taught in school. I believe in homeschooling. I believe in sitting you behind home. And by the way, homeschooling is not you every day spending 5 hours with your kids going over texts and books and all this stuff here. Your kids are self-taught with video games. They're self-taught with music. I homeschool my kids, and now my grandkids have graduated. And they sit at the kitchen table, open their book up, and do their work. And I'm in Cleveland on the trip on my computer, seeing what they're doing. And my kid, my little girl, man, at 18 became a banker because she knew I didn't have no money. She knew how to address properly. She knew how to read and write and study. That's the parents' job. So what we have to do, we know that we're self-governing. The politicians don't believe that we're self-governing. And you mentioned people going into politics and getting rich. They go into politics because they got to get that money to pay them bills. So when that donor comes in to get that money, you're not going to do anything against his wills. We got to stop the donor class. We got to stop. So what Trump is doing now, he's quite aware that you're right. He lost money. But I asked him once. I was on his advisory board, Black Voices for Trump advisory board, and I asked him a question. Okay, you got 512 successful businesses worldwide. You own golf clubs. I don't mean can you swim, I mean can you walk into all over the world. You got a private plane with a gold doggone toilet. Come on, man. Why are you taking this mess? At your age, why are you doing this now? You can stop and go overseas and kings will meet with you. And he stared at me. He just stared at me like that was the dumbest thing he ever heard in his life. He said, my grandkids. My grandkids. What am I going to leave my grandkids? Folks, every man, I saw on his face. I was shaking his hand at the time, his hands, big old meaty hands. He's my grandkids. If it's not me, who? Who's going to save my, and that's what each man should be doing right now. Think about my doggone grandkids, my great-grandkids. My great-great-grandkids will know my name because I'm thinking about them right now. Yeah. And we all should be doing that and find leadership. There are leaders out here, they're going to lead us, but this independence we have, this freedom we have depends totally 100% on us.
Mason, we talk a lot about the responsibility. It's our watch on the freedom, independence, and liberty stand, right? We've been tasked with the responsibility in this generation to preserve it for the next one. Thus, your thoughts, we, Juliana and I, believe much the same way. You know, we look at our grandson and our nieces and nephews, and when we need motivation as to why, it's very easy to find, which is why President Trump did much the same thing and gave you a very simple answer. I think that when we look at states' rights and things coming down to the states and also locally, what you've just said is that's where the rubber meets the road. Like in our city, because of lack of vigilance, our city is now a Vision Zero city, which is the precursor for a 15-minute city. Our city manager, avowed globalist, right? Was the test or the litmus test for large swaths of autonomous rides, right? By 2040, the goal is for the city to not have any cars, right? It's going to cut down on accidents, right? But this is the precursor, right, for putting you into an open air prison, Mason. And when
Yes.
people ask
Yes.
us, how does the city council vote unanimously for something like this? Because that includes Republicans and libertarians, right? Say, this is what happens when we are not vigilant. And if I look at our conversation today, Mason, in totality, it really comes down to that. And we were warned by the framers and the founding fathers of this exact thing. There is a price to be paid for liberty, and the biggest cost center is vigilance. If you're not paying attention and you don't understand the rules, like the example you gave with the judge, you have no standing. And they know that. But when they run into somebody, it's like the old B-roll movie They Live, where they has the sunglasses. We got one that can see, right? It's like they don't know how to deal with you. But that's an important lesson and a takeaway from this conversation. So, Mason, as we wrap it up, and we'll give folks more information on states' rights and the American States' Rights Forum here in a minute. Mason, two things. One, what do you see happening in 2025 and 2026? Because we'll be up on midterm elections. Then I want to make sure people know how to find you. So please go ahead.
The midterms are our next battlefield, and we're going to have to organize. Trump is putting a lot of folks in play to keep us organized. We have to understand, folks, this is a continual, never-ending battle. You mentioned what your city is doing, local city is doing. How dare them? They have no fear of you. They have no fear of you guys. Then I wonder what you're doing, what you're saying. We got George Soros funding candidates all over this country now that do not love America. We got to recognize that. Then they got to get that from CNN. They're going to get that from the local news. They have to get it from you. We have to be the Paul Revere now and spreading the words. They got to hate us and call us names. What they do, they have to at least acknowledge we're here. And American people are smart enough to understand what freedom is. And that's why Hillary lost. They knew it was happening. That's why Trump won this time. They knew Camilla. We're not down. We're just scared. But once you give us something to hold on to, states' rights will be the thing to hold on to, then we're going to win this thing. In the LA state, you're talking about the Electoral College. LA County has more people voting there than the lowest 7 states combined. LA County has a bigger population than the 7 lowest states combined. You do not want to get rid of the Electoral College.
Wow, Mason, do you want to talk about putting some context to it? You absolutely do not want to lose the Electoral College. Mason, how can people find you? You're a dynamic speaker and a writer, motivator, entrepreneur. How can people get more information on you? How can they connect with you?
Well, it may be quicker now since Zuckerberg said he's going to stop getting rid of folks, conservative folks online. But MasonWeaver.com is my name, my number. I've written, like I said, many books. I speak worldwide. I'm easy to reach. Mason Weaver at MasonWeaver.com is my email address. I will travel. I will bring the gospel. I will bring the truth. Whether they hurt me or love me or come against me, you're going to get the truth and I'm going to go home.
Amen. Love it. So for more information on the American States' Rights Forum and the work that's starting here in the free state of Florida, you can go to statesrights.us. That's statesrights.us. We need you. Battles are being won. Our friends getting fluoride out of the water here in the state of Florida. The Florida Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, coming out strongly against these things. Those things can happen in your state as well, and we want to help you with the foundation to do that. For Mason Weaver, this is R.C. Williams. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the Watchmen Brief. For more information on all things Watchmen, just go to Watchmen Action. That's Watch, M-E-N, action.org. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, sir.